So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast, and we have Joe Christensen and Adam Schaefer on with us. Welcome, guys.
Hey, how's it
Thank you
going?
so much, Brad.
Yeah, excited to have you both on. Joe and Adam are with Cardinal Crest. They're business partners, co-owners, which we're going to have to dive into that because you two have found some magic elixir to make that partnership work. And I've spent enough time with you to see you guys actually do a phenomenal job, making the partnership work, which can be a little complex, right, for most people to have a partnership.
Amen. It is. It's a second marriage.
It is. I mean, here's what's amazing about you both, and maybe we'll divert here a little bit, is that not only have you started business together, but your wives are friends, your kids are friends, you guys live near each other, you travel together. Like, how in the world have you been able to make that work so well?
Gosh, you got right into like the personal, hardcore stuff. I like it. Oh man. I guess I'll go and I'll let Adam think.
Yeah.
Or maybe as you're about to go, Joe, maybe I'll say it this way because, again, I keep diverting here because I have like 5,000 questions for you guys. But when I look at your social media channels, you guys are beyond creative. Like, they're so fun to watch, which we'll get into your channels and TikTok stuff later. And you did a video that we're going to spend some time on because it's like one of my favorite videos of all time that I've watched like 40 times. So Joe hanging his head out the window. It's kind of part Joker from Batman, but then it's also like the building craze of now. But so does Adam just do the filming and you do the acting? Because you'll flip that too, because I know that sometimes Adam does the acting and you're doing the filming. So maybe that's why the partnership's so good.
Adam, I think Adam and I, we met in college. We were both at BYU and we were friends first and then ended up being business partners. And I think really like the reason this business partnership has worked so well, I mean, there's a lot of dynamic things that we could talk about, but I think it really did help that it was such a struggle at the beginning and nobody really believed we could do it. And so we had to rely a lot on each other. And so like, I think partnerships are difficult. I still think, Adam and I are strong personalities that have totally different opinions. And the employees totally joke that mom and dad do fight at the office. Want to know, and I think that's just part of it. I think a lot of it is I know we're going to touch on some of this stuff, and I know we had talked about it prior. It's just conflict resolution is in every part of business in general, and it's okay. Like, conflict is okay, and it's actually good. And I think Adam and I have kind of left that, like, it's totally okay for me to disagree with Adam. It's okay for me to be like, I disagree, but if it's part of his, what he handles at work, and it's under his, we kind of have our own responsibilities. And if I disagree with what he's doing, I can voice that. But at the end, I know it's that's his thing. And I had trust in him that he's over that, those responsibilities. And actually, we learned that early on. Let me back up a little bit. I don't know if you remember this, Adam. Like, I think it was like our first couple jobs. We had like a kind of our first big fight. And it was because we were managing the same job. And we were both arguing about the different ways you can get it done. And I think we both decided then, it was like, you know what? There's lots of ways to do this. And there's lots of right ways to do this. And if this is your job, I trust you that you can get it done. And if this is your job, I trust that you can get it done. We'll talk about the overarching macro things, but the micro things you can do. And I feel like a lot of times we might have different opinions, but I think we both trust each other enough that, hey, if that's your MO and that's your responsibility and you're over this section of pre-con, like Adam does all the pre-construction, I might, hear something or do something, have an opinion about something, but I just trust Adam that, hey, in the end, that's his baby and he's my business partner. I have to have trust with him.
Yeah. And I think Joe hit it on the head just in his closing remarks there when he said the word trust. Joe and I, we have a level of transparency between each other, which is like 100% transparent. We don't keep anything from each other. We can all see the bank. We can both see the bank accounts. We both we we develop that trust by understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that has taken time to understand those things. But I feel like because we understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, we are able to trust each other more fully. The and it goes, you know, with Joe and I specifically, right? It goes like way beyond just this business setting. That you know, this podcast, you know, it's so hyper focused on this. But you had touched on it, Brad. Like Joe and I, we do a lot together, and it so it is more than just this business, and it is a true friendship. And like, I'm going to use the L word. I know in this business we don't really use it, but we love each other. We love each other. We are family, and so, you know, having that trust, knowing that, hey, you know, I know if I'm sinking, Joe's sinking with me. If I'm succeeding, Joe's succeeding with me, and I'm gonna you know, share that same support for him. If he's sinking, I'm gonna sink down with him, and if he's succeeding, I'm gonna succeed with him.
It's interesting because, I mean, just speaking about the partnership, I mean, there's some key words, I mean, that you both said. You know, you were talking about trust, right? You talked about client, or I shouldn't say client, I mean conflicts, right? Conflict resolution, you know, communication, transparency, right? Those are all the keywords, right? This is what's going to make your business work, your relationship work, well beyond just Cardinal Crest, right? Well beyond everything that you're going in. And I think what's really unique, because I know a little bit about your story because we've built a friendship and you're part of our Builder 20 group, and we've known each other for a while, is that, I mean, you guys built this like in the hardest time in the recession. You know, you do what I'm not going to spill the beans. We're going to get into that in a second. But going back to the, you know, the conflict resolution, I think this is a really important topic that I've never spent much time on here on the podcast. Is how do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with that? How do you resolve those conflicts that come up? Because it's innate, right? This is going to happen on a daily basis with trade partners, suppliers, clients, vendors, employees, partnerships, as you guys are speaking about. You know, how, and you mentioned this, Joe, that's not a bad thing. It's not bad to have conflicts. It's just, how do you get through it? And I'll just share one quick story. I mean, there's a friendship I have with a gentleman, and he's a developer. And the funny thing is that he and I, early on, we had, I don't want to say falling out, but a difference of opinion on something, right? And we worked through that and ended up becoming the best of friends from that. In fact, he set me with my wife. So you think about just how that pendulum came around, right? That, you know, that conflict resolution. So how have you guys either sought after how to resolve conflict, or, you know, kind of what's your secret to success there?
I think, well, unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to get good at conflict resolution without just doing a ton of it. And so I think we've all been through this. You know, if you're a contractor, you deal with it all the time, especially this last year. And the worst part about conflict resolution is typically the leading up to the conflict. So like, let's say we get an email, it's on Friday, and it's like, owner's pissed. He's just like, blah, blah, blah. You can imagine how hard he was hitting on the keyboard. He was just like, I went to the site, nobody's there. The subs are managing everything. Everything's wrong. You guys aren't doing anything. What am I paying you for? Like, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, change order. This is over price, behind schedule. And then there's 2 days. There's Saturday and Sunday. And typically, those are going to be the worst 2 days of your life, because you're thinking about all the possible bad things that are going to go wrong. And it's human nature to complete that story in one way or the other. You can complete it in a worst case scenario, the best case scenario, or somewhere where it's probably going to be where somewhere it's in the middle. And I think what I have tried to do, it doesn't always work, but with conflict, one, I don't run away from it. When somebody texts me an issue, typically my first response is, can I call them right now? Because if I don't let it fester in my mind, I can call it and it could squash it almost immediately. And it ends up being like, oh no, it might have sounded like a rude text, but I call them and the owner would be like, oh no, I was just like in a rush. So I just said, hey, what's up, man? Why are you doing? And it sounded rude because of maybe my personality was reading it that way, but it really wasn't rude. And then the other thing is, like, I think you could I don't do this all the time, so I'm not going to act like I'm the guru of conflict resolution because Adam will call me out, be like, well, Joe, that one time yesterday or 2 days ago. But I try to always think of like we tend to think about the conflict part and not focus on the resolution and go, okay, like this sucks. We've got to raise the price on this client $50,000 because of lumber, and they are so pissed because we're so behind schedule. So the resolutions is going to be that they have restored confidence in us, that we're going to set the expectations, where they should be, and really help them understand there's not much we can do about these certain items besides increased communication of the same thing we're going to be doing every day. So I think a focus on the resolution is one of the hardest, but also it makes it easier as you do that, and it's when it festers. And I think that goes back to our partnership. If we have problems with Adam and I's partnership, if it festers, that's usually like when it like erodes out, and all of a sudden we have a blow up, and we're like, bro, I didn't know you were even thinking about that. It's because we let something fester, and it became something that it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, since Joe beautifully covered that topic,
You're answering the next one first. That's how
he has beautiful hair, and you beautifully covered the topic.
Bro, I know. Gosh. No, I mean, like, how do we deal with conflict, right? Like, I agree with Joe in everything that he said. It seems our industry right now, the majority of conflicts are stemming from pricing, delays in schedule, and I would say managing expectations. And I feel like, the origin or the solution to dealing with conflicts is quality and continuous communication. I think one of the number one faults within our industry are, and I do see a paradigm shift happening, but we all know or we've all heard horror stories of the typical contractor that's always right. And whatever he says that's how it's going to be, and there's no other way to do it. And he's not a very nice person, right? So I think dealing with conflict, it goes back to cultivating a good relationship with your clients, being open and honest with your clients, admitting fault when it's necessary.
That's a good topic right there to even dive into, because that's hard. Because you worry about the liability of that.
Very difficult.
But I think that's a good
there is liability with that.
Or even if there's not even liability, by admitting fault, sometimes you're like, you want to be the expert. That's the reason they're hiring Cardinal Crest or AFT. And so
totally,
maybe letting your guard down, saying, well, this is our fault, makes it seem
right.
like, are we not professional of a company? Like, how could we let this happen?
But I think it's true. I think it opens some vulnerability up. I think we've done that. Like, I don't mean to, I totally am just trampling over Adam here, but like, we just had a,
yeah, I had a few more things to say, but whatever.
We just had a meeting about this. And I was telling the clients, I was like, listen, like we're at fault for not knowing how to communicate in this strange environment we're in right now, where we're doing so many things behind the curtain. And typically right now the owner's telling me, I want to know all those things because I go to the site and nothing's happening day after day out. And they're like, well, we're trying to tell them, well, things are happening behind the curtain. And they're like, well, we want to know those things. And I totally apologized. I said, listen, I can do that, but that's a new way. And I'm sorry I haven't done that. And I'm learning how to do that, but I'm at fault for not doing that because it's really a new way of building to say the client wants to know when, blah, blah, blah happened. Sorry, Adam.
No, totally. And that's actually another thing that we can talk about. But real quick, I wanted to just say far too often, to Brad's point, where we are the professional. This person hired me to complete a task or to build their dream home. And so as that professional, far too often, when we are listening to our clients, right, we are simply listening to respond because I'm the professional. I have the answers. I know what's up. But more often, we need to listen to understand. As we understand our clients and their needs, like we will have less conflict throughout the process. So listen to understand, not to respond. I think that's something we could all learn.
It's interesting.
And then to Joe's point.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Adam.
No, so I always thought it'd be an interesting question to ask clients early on, right? When you're at that point of, signing contracts or making that decision if they want to move forward with Cardinal Crest or AFT, asking that simple question: how do you communicate? How would you like us to communicate to you? Do you like it when we are blunt? Would you rather have all the information? Do you want to know the imperfections that are happening on your project? Would you like to not know? Maybe having that, I'm sure there's some key questions that we could ask our clients that would help, that would benefit the relationship and help that communication, and hopefully in turn have less conflict throughout the process.
Well, it's interesting as an interviewer, I had the cheat sheet, right? Even as I come in with the guests and I kind of have like a format or questions form, when I was thinking about conflict resolution, just personally, how to answer that, is funny. I already had some pre-notes, it's like setting expectations, which you guys both talked about. That's a big part of it. Understanding, job knowledge. And Joe mentioned this too, that like the more practice you have at it, or at least the more understanding and knowledge of the situation, the more prepared you are to either find a solution or at least work through that communication process, right? And then you guys had talked about nipping it in the bud, right? Admitting fault if needed, and really not making it personal. Like, it's interesting. So my mentor, passed just recently, and I spoke at his funeral, and one of my most notable experiences I had that I shared, when I was speaking, is that early on in our career, there was an issue with an employee, and it was a pretty severe issue. And in the past, a lot of management styles, I've seen it maybe not get personal, but very direct, this is cut and dry, here we go. And what I saw is that he had a very different approach. He came in and it was just like, how you doing? How's your family? It's very let your guard down, right? Coming into this very tense situation. And it never became personal. It was beyond professional. Like, he handled it like, I couldn't believe just the way he communicated through this process. And then, moving forward, as I worked through, just different business complications and stuff, and I'd see him take that same approach. And so what I realized is that a lot of times we come into, or at least I've been this way, where maybe I'm defensive or my team's defensive, maybe with the vendor or supplier or client. But if you come in not looking to pick a fight, just say, hey, here's where we're at, right? And I can speak to this now. I had a client, I was just out of town with the family, and we had an issue come up, and he was super distraught about this. Like, how could this happen this way? Or Hardy Brad, like, how is this possible that we're at this point? And me as a builder, I know, well, there's about 1 million things in your house, so it's easy to oversee this one thing that, in my opinion, we addressed at pre-construction, but it wasn't addressed. But that's okay. We're here, right? But it's really understanding, hey, hey, client, if this is like our biggest issue, this is not a problem. Like, we're going to work through this. Here's a solution. We can do X, Y, and Z. We'll work around this. Don't worry. This is not going to affect timeline or anything. And so it just comes with, it's confidence and experience, as you mentioned. But the biggest thing is, the more that we could set clear expectations, the more that we don't have an axe to grind, don't make it personal, and just come in and communicate through it. I mean, I think there's, this is definitely a learned trait that has to be practice, because we're dealing with it every day.
I think you bring up another thing is having like putting yourself, having empathy with the client, and being like, okay, you just said it, like, hey, this is no big deal. And to your world, it's like a minor step, but to them, it's like, oh my gosh,
the world's crashing down.
Yes. And it's so, I think that's the thin line between not taking it personal, but then because you can't take it personal, and you don't want to get emotional. You always want to be the adult in the room. You want to be, the cool, calm, and collective. So you just take it in, because nobody's ever going to be mad at you in 6 weeks and say, man, you were so cool in that meeting. Like, you didn't yell. You were just like so calm. Like, they're never going to be mad about that. But it's hard not to be like, because sometimes I want to shut off my emotions. It's just be like, this is how it is. But it's a fine line with clients, because they want to see that you understand that it's hard. And when you have 10, price changing meetings in a week, and you're like, okay, I got to do this again. I got to get in their shoes. They got to see that I'm upset with them, and it's a big deal to me that it's their house and it's personal. and it's hard. It's a fine line because you've got to show that personality. That's why they hire a custom builder. They like you too. It's not just, they like the brand and everything, but they're hiring, you as people. And I often say that to people in my sales meeting. I say, listen, like I say, there's a line I like to kind of often say, and I go something like, um, any builder who says they're not going to be, conflict, or that we're not going to be upset at your builder, is lying to you, right? It's something's going to happen that's going to be upsetting because it's too complicated. But the big difference is do you like the guy who's talking to you right now? And do you feel like you could get along with me? And that when you have problems, I'm approachable? Or am I scary? And am I not trustworthy? So I kind of get into and because it's the truth, like we're going to have issues. And the question is how we're going to approach them. And then we're going to create the environment that's not hostile, where we can have creative solutions. Because as soon as people retreat in their corners, and litigation might start, or lawyers might get involved, or we're starting to study the contract to see what the words are, that's when creative solutions are out the door. It's over at that point.
So do you find it more difficult right now? I mean, do you guys deal, at this point in your interpretation, is it more conflict resolution? Are we doing it more with suppliers, with subcontractors, employees, clients, a little bit of all of them? Like, what's your biggest pain point? I mean, right now, and maybe I teed up this way because what's funny is, for all of you, we're going to share their social media, and you need to go follow Cardinal Crest because they're incredibly creative with their videos. And there's one where Joe has his head out the car, and he's talking about how hard he thought it was to build a home, like in 2018 or 2019. Little did he know how hard it is to build a home in 2022, which we can all relate to. So, with that said, I mean, where is that biggest pain point right now for conflict?
So, like, the way I see it, so we started the company pretty much, let's just call it 2011, 2010, right in that time frame. Between 2010 and 2019, the frequency of a client blowout, or the need to sit down and have a good conversation about setting expectations with the client was maybe one time per job, one time. Now, fast forward, 2020, 2021, 2022, the frequency of these conversations, it's once a month on some projects. It's once every 3 months. And so I think that is the most difficult part of this client conflict, because it's happening so frequent, from suppliers changing pricing without giving any notification, to delays from labor not being able to perform work when they say they're going to be able to. And then that just stems into us. It is so hard to manage expectations. When we receive pricing, when we receive confirmation from our subcontractors on the plan, this is the plan of action moving forward. And then in one day, it seems like in 24 hours, that plan just went right out the door. And you're like, okay, back to square one. Let's have this conversation again, and let's set some new expectations for our clients. The frequency is what is so difficult. And, I'm the one that's filming that video of Joe, and I'm in the front seat with a friggin' selfie stick, hand out the window, driving, and I'm just laughing my head off, filming Joe, because in my mind I'm thinking, how many people are watching us film this down the street? And we did it in a neighborhood that we build in, and so it was just kind of really, really funny. But
so let me ask you this,
these conversations,
because the frequency is important, but I think to give context, I mean, everyone listening has to have a little understanding of your business, because your business is very unique. As we mentioned, you come out of school. Why don't you tell us this, just from the feasibility study to reality, but not only that, without spending too much time on the organization aspect, but how the company's evolved to now commercial, residential, and that you also do your own building. And so set pricing is something that's important in your market and for you, which is extremely difficult to achieve and optimize right now. So how have you worked around that, especially with the complexity of the different arms that you have?
Yeah, so like you kind of touch on it. What makes our business itself unique to Kansas City and to other custom home builders is that we take in all architecture on the custom homes, all interior design, and all the management of the build. And so now we have 3 different scopes in just a custom build. And we've done that because honestly, the biggest problem is that one, we didn't feel like there was architectural at the time, 10, 12 years ago, that there was an architectural staff or firm that could achieve what we wanted to achieve. And plus we were new to Kansas City. And so we relocated to Kansas City. And Adam and I really liked architecture, and we drew the first 60 homes ourselves and still do, draft some of those homes. But, and so Adam and I just were really in the weeds of the design, the interior design. And so kind of grew organically from there. It wasn't that we didn't want to work with architectural firms. It's just that we were new to Kansas City. We loved drafting. We loved the interior design. And so we just started doing it ourselves. When we only had a couple clients, it was easy. And then as we got more and more clients, we realized how hard it was to do all 3 of those things and try to scale. And so we just kind of organically kept hiring people to handle those 3 things. But like you said, what the problem about handling all 3 of those things in just the custom home is that you're taking on that much more risk in pricing when you now are taking on the responsibility and exposure of design. When your design's wrong, it's hard to then go back and say, well, when you're having an site architect and there's a change and something wasn't bid on the plans because it wasn't on the plans, it's a little easier to push that off to the architect and say, hey, this is a change order. It wasn't shown on the plans. Well, we could do that internally. The production guys can totally say, yeah, this wasn't on the plans, but we're going to say, oh, crap, we didn't put it on the plan, so we have to put it on there. So I think that's where, as we grew organically, the pre-construction team kind of kept on growing and refining its tools. And that's why I know you do a huge pre-construction effort as well. Our pre-construction process is 7 to 8 months, and it's because now we're taking upon that scope. And I know you manage those 2 scopes beyond building, and we just have it in-house. We still have to manage it, and we have to do it right. And the pricing of it is, it takes a long time to get it right to then turn it out the door and say, okay, let's produce this thing. But it's often a cat and mouse game, designing and trying to get their budget right to then actual budgeting. And actually, you kind of touched on it. I'll say this briefly, moving to commercial and having a commercial arm, which is completely separate, has helped us in the way we do look at certain things. Like I know when we were designing, when Adam and the pre-construction teams first doing architecture, we have an SD budget, schematic design, and they go to a schematic estimate. And then as it gets further down the road and, develop design or DD drawings and construction document drawings, the budget gets tighter and tighter. As we get more details, it gets tighter. And, I often talk to clients about like a pricing funnel. As we get more scopes defined, the budget gets tighter and we can get more of a closer range to what the house will be. But it's been an organic process from Adam and I doing everything to then creating teams to do it with us.
So do you have like escalation clauses, or especially as you're managing the whole gamut there, how does that protect yourself, especially on pre-sales?
Yeah,
we do. We do have escalation clauses.
Because you're going to have to answer this too, Adam, because even if you have escalation clauses, yeah, it's great. You're protected. Clients still don't, as you mentioned, go back to conflict resolution. They don't care. They don't
read that clause. They don't even know what it means until we pull it out and say, guess what? 80K, here it is. And they're like, oh, that's what that means. We've had one client who actually knew what it meant, and they didn't sign the contract because of that one clause.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely there are escalation clauses, and I guess where I'm going with this is we have had to learn that we need to be just even more transparent with our contracts. It's not hey, that paragraph is there and that's awesome, but let's go above and beyond and let's put real values. Brad, you've got a lot of, the majority of your contracts are cost plus, and ours, the majority of ours are fixed price. But what we've done to help our clients understand escalation and whatnot is we've identified, the areas of construction that have the most volatility, and we've been super transparent with our clients. This is the amount of money that we have allocated for X line item, structural steel, and that is an allowance. It's a structural allowance is what we call it. Here is the dollar amount we have allocated towards framing material. And the beauty of that is when there are these internal wins on those specific line items, the customer benefits from that. And we can show that to them, and we show them the invoices for those allowances that we've identified. But then when there are overages, we set the contracts up so it is very, very transparent, and our clients can see, this was the overage and here's the invoices for that.
I think it's an interesting topic. Yeah, I love that you shared that, Adam, because it doesn't matter if you're cost plus or fixed sum. And where I'm getting at is that, it's really easy in the contract. Let's just say hypothetically on cost plus, well, it's cost plus, so whatever it is, right? Or on fixed price, well, yeah, it's fixed price, but we have this escalation clause to counterbalance that, right? But as you mentioned, there's still like communication, right? There's still a relationship here that we can't just, not all our clients are experts in this industry. It's no different than us, staying at a hotel or resort or signing a contract for rock climbing or whatever. Are we reading all the fine print? I don't know. I mean, what is that? Until most of us aren't, we're trusting the entity there. And so what it comes down to, as you mentioned, is that plus minus. I think that's really fair in the sense that we've done the same thing, that we've realized, hey, we keep getting bit on the same thing where we're not so much missing the mark, but there's some items in the bid that are just moving all the time. So when we do our bid process, we're going to highlight those. Hey, here's XYZ, right? These, lumber, steel, concrete, whatever it may be that could fluctuate depending on time. Because for us, on a hillside build, I may be building your house for a year before I even order lumber. So who knows in a year from now where it's at. But that transparency is key. That communication is key, to just walk them through and say, here's what this means, right? That we can protect you as much as we can. There's some, we can lock in plumbing fixtures and appliances and some of these things now. Some of the tile and slabs and other things, but we're open-ended here because I can't order it. I have nowhere to store it, right? And to your point, Adam, that you're saying is that this is what I think is a really unique strategy as a fixed builder, or where someone's buying a pre-sale, said, hey, we're going to let them benefit if there's a -2. So being transparent now creates that open dialogue that, hey, here's where we're at for these few line items that we don't have much control over. And if it comes down, it's in your favor. If it goes up, but here we go. And I think that's really key, because you may have the escalation clause in there, but pointing out what that clause means to them and how they impact would definitely help that conflict resolution later down the road.
And I mean, right now, like it's super easy to talk about all this stuff because these are all things that we've learned within the past 6-8 months. But keep in mind, we signed a lot of these contracts 2 years ago. And
I know.
If we do have some clients listening to this, they will know that Cardinal Crest is striving to be better. And I think that is
I love that. I love that caveat, but
I think from a builder mindset, just to that point, I hope that is always our goal. We can always do better. There's systems and processes within all of our businesses, and we develop these beautiful systems and these beautiful processes so that we can gauge our imperfections, right? If I don't have a system for XYZ, if I don't have a process for XYZ, I don't know what the heck is happening if things are going wrong. I might have an idea, but I won't know. So, as we're developing these systems and processes, I hope that as builders, we're always open to the idea that I may need to pivot and I may need to change this beautiful process that took me 3 years to develop or whatever. But what I've understood is that's my issue. It is this particular part within this particular process that I need to change. So, hopefully we all have that mindset where we can continue to do better and be better always.
Well, and I think like even at this whole fiasco of the last 2 years. Adam and I developed something. It was something we always talked about, but now we didn't develop a slogan and a PDF and a fancy way of saying it, but it totally works. We call it our daily CCP, and it's contact, calendar, plan. I said it backwards, I think. And with that, it's so simple. But what we decided to do is that, I use it as the analogy of eating at a restaurant. And there's a difference if you have to grab your waiter and say something. And there's a difference if your waiter comes in and grabs you and says, how's the meal? You want a refill? You want this? You want this? It was a proactive approach. And Adam and I were talking one night as we were getting off probably a meeting of conflict resolution with something. And we kind of came up to that. We're like, gosh, we need to be more proactive. That's the problem, is that our clients aren't feeling like, yeah, our production team, which is amazing. They do a great job. At times they would be like, well, I just talked to that homeowner like 3 times. And then he texts me and says, your PMs aren't talking to me. And I was trying to understand that, what's going on? And then it came to a realization that we're not being proactive enough. And so part of this CCP was a weekly proactive scheduled phone call. Now, this is beyond the scheduled meetings that we have. We have these scheduled milestones, these daily logs that we're going to do, but a proactive, we have to have this phone call, and it's going to be no more than 20 minutes. At the most, maybe 30 if we get in the weeds of things, but it's going to be short, and I'm going to call you, and we're going to be proactive about this approach. And it's amazing. The moment we started that, within a week's time, I got texts from every client. I don't know what's going on with Cardinal Crest, but I'm loving the change. I'm loving it. And it was like all of a sudden, they felt like, and they probably were talking. I know it for a fact. They were already talking to RPMs just as much. There was no difference besides a planned, proactive approach to communication. And I look back and I'm like, gosh, at all the suckiness that has happened over the last year. A lot of times when you get squeezed, that's when creative solutions come about. And it's one thing that I think I know we'll look back in a year or two and be like, during those times, we're going to take that and use it forever. It's been awesome. And it really came about from all this, mess that we're dealing with.
Okay. So before I ask you this question about the proactive approach, this is what I love about the podcast. To be honest, people always say, Brad, why do you do a podcast? I'm like, well, every time I interview somebody, there's like a nugget, right, that they always share. And I'm like, oh, that's genius. Like, I can apply that or do that right in my own life or my business. And what's funny is you talked about just that example. All of us have been in a restaurant, and when you said it's like a light clicked, right? That waiter that you're like, oh, I need a drink, you're like waving them down. But if they just check in, you may not need nothing, but if they're coming by and checking by, then you're like, okay, I'm good if I need some. But, how can we do that as builders? And so what does that mean for you when you talk about the proactive approach for your team? Is there something specific that they're doing that they weren't doing before? You said they were communicating, but now it's different. So what was that transformation?
The big one is a planned phone call. No matter what, that phone call is happening. It's a once a week phone call, and it's beyond with the client. It's beyond this little piddly phone calls that happen in between. This is the planned phone call, and we're having it to download everything. And that phone call, they talk about change orders, they talk about potential change orders, we talk about schedule, and it's brief. So what the important part is, it's not too long. It's not going to be an hour meeting. And if it's an hour meeting, then it needs to be a meeting. But this one's brief, a check-in to kind of to not be a reactive phone call, right? Because there's tons of those. There's tons of, hey, I was at the site, Joe, and I saw nobody's there. Hey, hey, homeowner, we're doing painting, and we just want to confirm that your walls are all pure white. We had talked about it, maybe something else. Like, that doesn't count. Those kind of little piddly phone calls or communications, one that's like, hey, we're checking in, we're seeing how things are going with you this week. We're seeing about the progress, and we're talking about how we're doing on our schedule, our budget, our change orders, our communication. And it's been, I think it's done a lot. It's changed a lot. We're still
I know
That's been
perfecting
like
it.
the biggest change is like, you know, our you know, our production team, they're constantly communicating with the homeowners. And so in their minds, if we just say, hey guys, communicate with the homeowners, they'll say yes. But the majority of the communication with the homeowner is a homeowner initiating the conversation, and our guys understanding that as, dude, I've done my job. I talked to
Talked
them.
to him 3 times
I
today.
talk to them. I look at my text messages, but the clear defining, moment for that was, hey, this is a Cardinal Crest once a week initiated phone call where we are going to discuss X, Y, and Z kind of thing. But that was kind of one of those things, is developing this system, being very specific and clear on what the expectation is. But I think something else that is really important to touch on, not only this CCP idea, right? This isn't something that only gets discussed internally in Cardinal Crest. This is a system, this is a process that we share this with our clients. All of our clients know about this idea of CCP. We are very transparent with them. And I hope that as builders, there are builders with a wealth of knowledge that have amazing systems and processes. They need to share those systems and those processes with their clients. I hope that those are selling points for builders, and they don't try and keep that, oh, this is unique to me, and if I share it with a client, they might share it with another builder. Whatever the idea might be, in this market, in today's age, where you never want to be in the situation where you are being decided on price, right? If a client is saying, hey, I'm going to go with this builder or this builder, and it's price oriented, you don't want that. Share systems, share the processes with your potential and future clients, because then that price, that won't be the deciding factor. It'll be, this guy's professional, this guy knows, how to deal with conflict, this guy knows how to deal with communication, because he's mapped out this plan for me and set that appropriate expectation for me, and you'll get more sales.
So it's interesting hearing both of you speak. I mean, again, what's amazing is you said, and as you're sharing the story, I'm like, this sounds like conversations I've had with my team. My team's amazing, so I'm not trying to throw them on a bus by any means. But it's that learning process, right? We were like, hey, we need to have more interaction with our clients. And they're like, I am. But it's, it's the client asking them, and it goes back to the same thing. It's like, and this is why we started the weekly videos every Friday, right? That we can get in front of the customer and give them the look aheads. And it's just been a really engaging experience, because now we have the architect and designer involved on this group text. And so we have this weekly communication with the entire design team and our clients, and they all get to be aware of what's happening, right? So it makes that process really important. But I know you two are really big on processes. You're really big on systems, especially being that you have this very hybrid company, a lot of employees, in the Kansas City area, you're doing commercial, you're doing residential. And so you have a lot of different product lines. What are some of those systems? How has that evolved since day one, when it's Adam and Joe and you're trying to figure out your role, fighting over how to build a house, to here you are now with actual employees, your training and systems? What are you using? How have you continued to modify, that process?
Oh, Adam is he is. I'm going to kind of pitch it to him and speak kindly of what he does. Adam is a really good implementer in that sense. I feel like I am the dreamer in this partnership. I'll be like, dude, Adam, we can do it. We can take over. I mean, I don't feel like I can often underestimate the challenge of everything I want to do in my life. I'm like, yeah, we could do it. Sure. And then I'll tell Adam, he's like, what the heck did you just promise? What do you think we could do? But what Adam is good at is he's good at going back to the tool shed and being like, okay, how are we going to do that? And this is what happened. Joe promised this, it all fell apart, and this is how we're going to do it now. And so Adam has done a really good job. I think a lot of the way he's organized the systems is in different types of flow charts. And he is really good at making types of flow charts of how the pre-construction works, how the production works and ties back to the pre-construction, how the selection process works and what people are involved in the selection process. If I could like show you right now all the different, he would be, and not only that, but Adam's really good at beautifying this stuff. If you know InDesign, he works on InDesign, which is Adobe product.
Yep.
And
it's a great product. Like designers use it,
yeah, Adam will stay up at night and he'll shoot me this flow chart at 2 a.m. and I'm up, dreaming about some stupid thing and watching TV. And I look, I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm gonna let Adam talk about it. I just had to, prop him up on this pedestal first. He's the one that does a lot of the systems.
Well, I agree with everything that Joe said.
Well played.
Not at all. Okay, so you brought up something interesting, Brad, early on, right? Like Joe and I, we're a partnership. We can do this. Joe had mentioned earlier in the podcast that Joe and Adam, there was this conflict that occurred on the very first project that we did. And this wasn't even a sold home. This was a spec home. Joe and Adam are fighting
with no
over
client.
a spec home.
No client.
Conflict. So we learned.
Little did you know what was up ahead.
Right.
We were living our best life right then. We had no idea.
Dude. So we learned early on, okay, multiple ways to skin a cat. Here's how we're going to do this. Joe and I were both very capable people. We are Cardinal Crest Homes, but there is going to be the Adam Cardinal Crest way, and then there's going to be the Joe Cardinal Crest way. And what I mean by that is we started accepting clients based on Joe and I's capacity. So it was literally, 50% of the clients that came in, Adam took care of, and Adam built their home. He took them through the pre-com process, through the design of their house, through the production, and 50% was the Joe show kind of deal. And so when we started understanding that, hey, we are getting too big, we need to start hiring people, we learned very, very fast that we need to develop some systems.
The Joe show was
Joe
awesome.
and
the Adam show was
I needed some work. So that, that's when we definitely learned that we need to have a division in roles and responsibilities between Joe and I, and we also need to identify those roles and responsibilities for our employees so that we can have a single Cardinal Crest experience for our clients, something that's repeatable, consistent, I guess is a better word than repeatable. And so we had to develop these systems, and it had to start, from the very, very inception, from the leads. How do we communicate with leads? What is this email? This intro email that gets sent out to help, and what questions are we going to ask to help identify if this is a future potential client, if it's not, kind of deal. And then it goes through every step of the way, right? It has to.
Well, I think you bring up a good point that even like every company, I think, goes through this. And if they haven't, they just don't know it. That like, even if don't have a business partner, but you hire a PM or a superintendent, if you don't have a system in place, that home is going to be built the superintendent's way, unless you're going to be involved in every aspect. And then when you hire superintendent 2, both those homes are going to be built a little differently. And so the system makes it a consistent way of managing, a consistent way of making money, a predictable process that then can be repeated multiple times and fine-tuned. And then when things go awry, you can often go back and say, okay, did we follow the process? What went wrong? How do we get it back on the rails again? And I think no matter who you are, if you're business partners or not, that was Adam and I's evolution to systemizing way more things. I think every small business owner probably has that same process. Actually, what am I talking about? Great book. What is it called? I just quoted pretty much something about it. Predictive. Oh gosh. I should have, hold on. Now I got to find it. There's a great
You
book
look for it,
about
Joe.
process.
While you're looking for that, and bring up that reference here in a second. But maybe for you, Adam, as he's looking that up, is that being that you're involved in the systems and flowchart, do you have a different flowchart and system process for the commercial side as opposed to residential? Because you're doing all in-house on residential, I'd assume maybe I'm wrong, but are you doing the architecture and design on commercial too, or is that a whole different operation?
A whole different operation. And, I think that is, it's a great question because, if our business as a whole, right, we have Cardinal Crest Residential, maybe like, why are you just happy with Cardinal Crest Residential? Why do you have Cardinal Crest Commercial?
Why go through the headache?
Why are you spreading yourself thin, or why are you not just hyper focusing on one? I think it is important for everyone to know they are completely separate entities. The staff on the residential side does not dabble in any of the commercial, and the staff on the commercial side does not dabble in any of the residential. But like kind of cultivating a culture within your company. We have employees. I'm going to refer to my employees as my colleagues, because we as business owners, we can learn so much from our colleagues. And you learn your weaknesses very, very quickly from them if you have a culture, and if you create an environment for them to feel comfortable voicing their opinions. You will understand what systems and processes you need to implement. And so I think as business owners, I think that's the golden ticket right there, is cultivating that environment where your colleagues, your employees can and feel comfortable to make recommendations on how you as the owner can and should run your business. So a lot of the systems that we have in place and a lot of the processes were colleague driven. Our employees came up, the idea or the need was realized by our employees. And it was our responsibility to listen to them and understand, admit fault for whatever it is, if that's the right word to say, but think, okay, I need to develop something, so that I can create a successful process for my colleagues so they feel fulfilled and accomplished.
The book is called Predictable Success. It's a great book, and it actually goes through like the entrepreneur, first of just trying to get sales to growing, and he talks about it's the process of every business. It's a really great book. Anyway, that's fine. But you had a question, Brad. Commercial processes are a lot different because we are hiring outside architecture, and those architectural firms typically have interior designers either in their firm or they hire somebody outside, and then we're using outside consultants like our MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing consultants. We have a civil engineer. The projects are a lot different, but at the same time, there is some overlapping processes that I would still say, like the pre-con. There is still I think it's made us, when I deal a lot on the commercial side, and the pre-construction process on the commercial side, because we were so nitty gritty and into the weeds on the drawings on the home side. Now that I'm on, we have a process for the pre-con on the commercial side. We follow that same kind of process. We get schematic drawings from a developer, and we're off to the races about trying to get them pricing on just rough order of magnitude on some of these drawings, and say, okay, we know these are just schematic drawings. If we send those to contractors, typically they're going to be like, these drawings are crap. There's nothing on them. Is there something else coming? And it's always like, yes. I just had this conversation Friday. Hey, it's called a schematic design for a reason. It's just a little snapshot of what it's going to be. So let's talk about what we see here and where this falls in pricing, And they're always like, bull crap. I'm not going to be able to do that. And then I say, hey, don't worry. There's going to be a development design set, and I'll have a little more detailed. And finally, you'll be able to actually bid a construction document or a permit set. And so I think we've just taken our same detailed approach that we've used that Adam's really created on the home side and said, okay, how do we take outside consultants and do the same approach in a very detailed orientated? Because on the commercial side, we're trying to avoid hard bidding anything and doing more of a GMP or cost plus, where it's a more of a negotiated sum and saying, okay, this is what we're going to charge, but we want to be in early at schematic design so we can start giving you value immediately and show you how you could get the best product at the best price. And you can decide what kind of finishes or different details you want, but we're going to be in it very early, so we can go through all the little details.
Well, yeah, that design build, I mean, that's something you specialize in. So being involved early, I would imagine that would help to the design and budgets and everything else. And it's really hard to create a hard budget, especially at so early in the process. But, as you're speaking, Adam, speaking of the processes, it's funny because one of my favorite quotes that is from Mike Tyson, right? He says, everyone has a game plan to get punched in the face. And I think there's so many applications because that's like real life. You think you have everything on script, or even your business, you think you have everything mapped out, and then you get punched in the face. And it's like, okay, well, now what? We're fighting now, so we got to figure this out, right? And so there's the real world application. What I mean by that is asking your employees, I think, is a really important topic that you brought up. And what I mean by that, I look at how our company's involved. And when I speak to our employees, especially if we have meetings and we're continuing to refine our process, is that I have an interpretation. I've been in the field, right? I've been a superintendent. I've done this. As you get farther away, there are things you not forget, but it's just not my day-to-day routine, right? So you tend to overlook that. But additionally, there's other roles that I haven't done, maybe my project coordinator or my controller. And so they may have aspects saying, hey, Brad, on my scope of work, like this really isn't fitting, or it's taking too much time, or it's keeping me from performing this. And so that feedback is really important because that's allowed us to refine and continue to evolve to say, and Joe said this early on, and you too, Adam, that as we have clients listen, I know I have clients that, some we've done an amazing job and some we had some work to do. And the reason being that we're a company that's getting better every day and we're learning, but these processes are really important because now we can really understand roles and delegation and who's responsible for what, that now is us, to be less inefficient by that overlapping.
Yeah. I love that quote.
So from Adam and Joe, so how does that work now? Because I know you guys have an amazing company culture. I mean, just knowing you two and your personalities, how do you deal with, not that you have had a ton, but how do you deal with turnover, with training, with hiring, which tends to be a tough topic right now?
I know. I mean, I think this whole thing has changed a little bit because even when we were emailing each other back and forth just planning this, we actually had, I don't know when this podcast will actually come out, but I'm just going to say it, we had a key employee that I was talking to on the phone at 4:30 Friday evening, and then he ended up emailing us his resignation at 5. I got off the phone with him about 5:45, and 5:15 we got an email that he is now leaving. And I talk to this individual every day. I had no idea. And honestly, it's making me question a lot about people's comfortability of talking to us and what people are willing to share and what they're not. And to tell you the truth, I'm just speaking from the hip here. I don't really have any lessons learned here yet because I'm learning them right now. I'm thinking, well, I didn't know him. I was talking to him every day. We were joking. We had a good relationship. I'd come in. He's one of the first people I would talk to every time I came to the office. And I was floored. And I still feel like, gosh, what did I do wrong? Like that I didn't know him. And I didn't know he was either that unhappy or he was looking for that much more opportunity. And I think it's something that it's a hard thing right now because it's such a, I don't know what the word is, pandemic of resignations and people burnout. I mean, we've had a lot of burnout. My own brother quit our business. I don't know if my brother was a PM for us for 7 years, and he quit 3 months ago. And so, like, things it might look that we got our crap together here at Cardinal Crest, but it's a hard time right now, and people are getting burnt out. And I feel like right now I'm scrambling. I know Adam is too. We're scrambling to make sure our people are still covered and they're enjoying their life as much as they can, because COVID and the problems it's caused and the inflation with the inflation that we're having now has worked itself through every industry. First it
Hmm.
was the medical industry, and then it became different service industries, different products that we needed, and now the building industry is seeing it, and it's at critical mass every day, all day, and the PMs are usually taking the brunt of it. Um, and truthfully, I don't know. It's a lesson that I'm learning right now that um, I've got to be better. I've got to understand our employees more and their needs and wants. And I thought I was.
Like Joe and I, our company, it's been around for 11, almost 12 years, but 70, 80% of our staff have been with us for 3 years or less. And so the whole idea of employees, I guess, from a grand scope of things, it's relatively new. Um, and so that's something, I mean, it hits home right now. Joe just explained what had just happened. And, we are rethinking a lot, and we are thinking of new ideas that we can protect our employees, make sure that they're not only that like we're creating like a fun environment, but that they are okay with their families at home, make sure that we have a relationship with their wives or with their husbands, with their children, trying to take a better initiative to be present, not only in the work life, but also outside of work. We do, I love every single one of our colleagues, our employees. And we try and tell them, you better be home or on your way home at 5 o'clock. And I think that is a tough thing to say right now, but our guys, they're so good and they work so hard, and they will work past 6 o'clock, and they will work past seven
All the time.
sometimes. And you're like, go home, dude, go be with your family, because the bottom line, like, and I hate to say this, but the bottom line, it is just work. There are bigger things in this life, and your family's got to be number one.
Well, there's
And
always
so,
another fire. Like that's the problem. And I
yeah,
don't mean this. There's always an emergency. And
Hmm.
we've been doing this long enough that you just always know there's always a client that's going to say, like, and for any clients who are listening to this, they're going to experience this. You're going to always feel like my house is on fire and I need all the attention right now. And it's you learn that like there's always another mountain to climb. And so you've got to set boundaries. And I think what we're having a challenge is having the right training and onboarding for certain and key employees like PMs to help them understand that, because it's really hard. I feel like Adam and I have gotten to that point that we know, hey, I just got a nasty text that was really out of line, and that client's pissed. And early on in my career, I would call him immediately. If it was 11 at night, I would call him and be like, let's talk. But now it's like, sorry, man. Or if I'm during a soccer game with my kids, it's like, sorry. My wife, my wife has given me enough laser eyes during the soccer games. I'm not answering this. But our PMs are not there, and it's hard to train that. It's hard to have an onboarding, because that's a different skill. That's a soft skill that is, if not learned, then you get client burnout. Like, not client, but PM burnout, like we've seen. And I just talking to other people, this is happening across the industry. I cut off Adam a lot if you guys haven't noticed. So Adam, I'm sorry. He puts up with me. I cut him
I
off.
don't feel that way. Don't worry.
I do it all the
I
time.
do not feel that way.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, and maybe not to get into specifics on the specific, employee, Joe, but it's interesting. Even as much as you communicate with someone, there could be maybe a change of career path. It could be,
Right.
there's a lot of reasons why people are looking somewhere else, right? Or maybe they may start their own business. It may not just be, hey, I'm not happy with Cardinal Crest, I'm going to do a horizontal move to a different,
Right.
builder, right? There's a lot of things to play into it, but I think overall, some important points you bring up is, just it's not that we're working in this because I know it's easy when you go through social media and, hey, this next generation or whatever, that, they're soft, or, they haven't had to do it like our way, but there's a lot of that's not true. I mean, I see like a lot of our younger people that are extremely like, they work so hard. They're super bright. They're looking for different methods, especially something we need in construction. But what I found is that even outside of that, construction can, this day and age with inflation and politics, and there's so much that strains us in different ways. And there's so many things pulling for our attention. And then when you have the client aspect at times, if we're not managing expectations, or we may have a tough client, I mean, there's a lot of things that could be a perfect storm. But to your point, I think what's really important is that not just work hours, but I've seen with our team, I'm like, and this is important for me in the sales process and business development, is to tell our clients, hey, if it's an emergency or like the house is burned down, yes, call my super. But, after 5 p.m., on weeknights, weekends, send that email Monday morning, maybe not Sunday afternoon, that they're going to read and stress out. And it's probably from our team too. Don't open that email, just wait, So part of that's trying to figure out, well, how do we let them have that personal time to disengage, because they do have to have that ability to recharge.
So true. Well, and honestly, it kind of brings up this other subject that's kind of like, it's kind of the elephant in the room for us, like, and a lot of builders, is that we've experienced a real slowdown in the last 4 months. And honestly, though, I think it's really needed. This market right now is unsustainable. Nobody will continue to be craftsmen in this market if this keeps on going the way it's going. And so there needs to either be a slowdown to a time to build up. And that's the problem, is that we had been building at such anemic levels for the last 10 years. And then we finally hit this, critical selling point 2 years ago. And now I think everyone's sticker shocked, inflation, a little bit of recession fears if we're not already in one. But I've really looked at it, and I've actually, like, after thinking about all the pending problems that could occur in the next 6 months to a year, I'm really excited, because I think things have to get back to where subcontractors and GCs have a normal working relationship with each other. And it's not so much of, the sub will say, this is my price and this is how I'll do it, and this is when I'll show up, and that's how it is. And clients also really can respect and kind of honor the craft. I feel like at this point, we've let them down so much because it's been so unpredictable that some clients have really, they know it's difficult. They will voice that it's difficult, but it's still so unbelievably different than what it used to be, that I think a slowdown is going to help reset a lot of things back to normal. And even though I don't think pricing is going to get that great, there's a whole number of things we could talk about why I don't think it's good. There's no impending crash, and I don't want to get too much into the philosophies of Joe, but I do think a slowdown is well needed and welcomed, so that we can enjoy this again and fall in love back with the craftsmanship and the craft of building a home and loving it and pleasing and actually hitting the mark, right? Like I know, you're Brad, you're AFT, and the company is what it is because you've delivered on what you've said so many times. This last year, if we built Cardinal Crest on our performance of this year, we would not be where we're at, because we don't hit the mark. We don't hit the schedules. We don't hit the budget because it's changing all the time. And so it can't go on this way, or you're going to have to underpromise at such a dramatic level. Who's going to build with you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. It's funny you say that, because I think, when you're speaking about that relationship, it's never healthy when there's not enough work and the GCs are pounding on the trade partners, and it's never healthy when there's too much work and the trade partners are kind of dictating, whatever they want, right? Whatever terms they want. Right. There has to be that happy medium, and I think that's healthy for the client, the builder, the trade partner, and the start, right? That everyone can kind of work in that world, which isn't always common. But so on this podcast, we've dove into some of the very complex things, Cardinal Crest and just life. What do you guys do for fun? Because there has to be some outlet, just speaking about the mental health. And I know you guys, what do you do outside of work?
Adam, I'll let you decide this one.
What do we do outside of work?
As owners, there's not
Brad.
much to that. You're working all the time. I understand that, but there has to be some outlet.
Pickleball.
The cool thing-
Adam and I play pickleball at least once a week
yes.
with each other. We
There you
were
go.
on a pickleball league. We play for a long time. We play for 2 hours at a time. Now I did just like bust my knee, and so now I have to like wear this knee brace, and Adam laughs at me.
The cool thing, work is I think that is what is so exciting about the future for Joe and I is because we do absolutely 100% love what we do, and we know within our market here in Kansas City, like we will be the best builder in this market, and that's always where we're striving to be is we want to be the best. And we know that our market is for the taking. We can be, and that will always be our goal. And so, like, we've got some fun, crazy, cool, big remodels on the pipeline that we're excited about. We've got some new builds that we're excited about. And even though, Joe had mentioned that there is, things have gotten a little bit slower, what we just need to remember is we are in charge of our destiny, right? We can still be selective on the jobs that we take on. Make sure that we are selecting the jobs that work for Cardinal Crest and our systems and processes, and we're excited for that. There are still there's still amazing projects ahead that will come through this year and next year, and we're just stoked about it.
You didn't want to answer the fun part though, Adam.
I know.
Hey, I ran a half marathon on Saturday.
Wow.
Adam signed up for a triathlon.
I signed up for a half Ironman.
Oh,
Good
half
for you.
Ironman.
And I'm going to be preparing for that. That'll be exciting for me.
Adam is also an expert hunter. Adam like
hunting and fishing.
Adam goes like backcountry crazy hunting where like most people would be like, I need a guide and somebody to like show me how to do that. Adam would be like the guy they drop into the middle of the wilderness with, just like, a knife and some like flint, and he'd figure it out and he'd come out with a bear. So
he's like Michael Scott in The Office when he goes into the woods.
Yeah.
Totally.
No, Adam. No, truth be told, Adam is legit. Like I know we've had conversation. What's interesting, a funny story about Adam is, I hate the cold, and when we were in Sun Valley, Idaho, and you're telling me that you like slept outside in the freezing cold just to see how long your body could take it before you gave up. I'm like, who is this guy? Like Navy SEAL in training,
That's
gosh.
He likes to do that stuff.
No,
and
Joe is incredibly musically talented.
Not
Plays the
anymore.
guitar like a madman. He needs to start a band real soon. So anyone in Kansas City that's listening, this guy needs a band to join. He's incredibly talented at making Halloween decor.
Oh,
It's incredible.
You know what, Brad? I think with this question, I'm gonna skip over the Halloween
tee up there from Adam.
infatuation, that I have. But I honestly like it's part of the you brought it up early. Like I think Adam and I both have really started to enjoy making like social media posts, reels and whatnot. Like it's become at first it was just like a joke, and it wasn't like at all like it's funny how social media kind of grows into that. Like it's important, and it's something that we do a lot, but it wasn't like we're going to do this to get a lot of followers or just get a lot. It was like I would hear something that someone else would do on a reel, and I'd be like, oh, that would be funny if we did it. And Adam and I would talk about that forever. Like that'd be funny because that's just like this. And then we started doing them, and then it became, Adam and I usually take like it's usually an hour to an hour and a half once a week. And I will save a bunch of reels, and I'll kind of write it out like, okay, I need Adam to do this and this. And then we'll get together and we'll be like, okay, that's stupid. Let's not do it that way. Let's do it this way. And it's fun. I mean, I think it's become a creative outlet for both of us and a way to like really, I have fun doing it. I think, and it's fun looking back and being like, looking how big of idiots we are. I'm sure people look at us and they're just like, what the heck? Our clients often laugh at it. I mean, I get texts from clients a lot like that will joke about it because it is breaking the ice on some things. Like I talk about some sensitive subjects on there sometimes, and I often think, oh, I just talked to this client about the price increase and I just joked about it in the reel. How pissed are they going to be?
Well, I love that you shared that. So along those lines, I mean, what are your social media and handles there so that everyone can follow you?
Our main one is just Cardinal Crest Casey on Instagram, and I don't really do I haven't really gotten into TikTok. We have a TikTok, but I don't really use it very often. I'm mostly on we're mostly on Instagram. We have a Facebook as well, but I'd follow us on there. We're very active and engaging on that. And if you want to know more, even further down, we've got a lot of information on our website. You can find the links on Instagram there.
Well, Adam and Joe, you've been amazing. I mean, we've already pushed an hour and 20 minutes here and ton of content, and we probably got through about 3 questions. So can't thank you enough for making time. You guys have a wealth of information. It's been amazing to see your business grow. And just one little plug for you is kind of funny. I was just so CBUSA, it's a group of buyers, and I was with them at a quick conference last week just for a day. And there's this builder who builds a lot in North Carolina. I mean, they're in Raleigh. They're one of the bigger players in town. And they pulled me aside and they're like, "Do you follow these guys like Cardinal Crest?" And I was like, he's like, "I love them. They're my favorite. Like, they're amazing." And I said, "Well, yeah, I know them pretty well. They're good guys." So kind of a small world. So, and this guy's not, I mean, I think he has like 5 followers on Instagram. Like he's not even really on there, but he follows you. So kudos to you guys. So
that's awesome. Cool. Those are the people I want to know more about. Like, that's the only thing that, not to dive, I know we're wrapping up here, but like one thing about social media that always like gets me, and I'm like, man, it's always like, I want somehow to like unearth all these crazy builders that have so much experience that never share because they're too, it's not in their nature and they don't understand that it's not bragging or anything. Like, I want that guy, like, I want him to like share everything because I feel like sometimes I'm just obnoxious and share too much. But anyway.
Not at all. Share more. Well, I can't thank you guys enough. I know you're super busy, have a lot going on. So Joe and Adam, thank you.
Thanks, Brad. It's been fun.
Thanks, Brad.